1, 7. Midpoint and distance. Find the midpoint of the line segment joining the points R and S. Now to find the midpoint, all you gotta do is add up to 2 x coordinates and divide by 2, and then add up to 2 y coordinates and divide by 2. So we have -4 plus 2, which will be -2, divided by 2, which is -1. Make sure you use parentheses. Now we do 1 plus 6, which is 7, divided by 2, will give us 7 over 2. It says use simplified fractions instead of decimals, so write it as 7 over 2. Close your parenthesis, and that's number 1. Number 2, find the coordinate of the midpoint of the segment with the given endpoints. All you do is add those two up and divide by 2. -8 plus 3 is -5 divided by 2. Unless it says do a decimal, write it as a fraction, so -5 over 2. And there's number 2. Going to number 5. Find the coordinates of the other endpoint of the segment given its midpoint and one endpoint. Let x and y be the unknown endpoint. Although it says apply the midpoint formula, and you could do that, I'm going to show you a shortcut way to see if you guys like doing it that way. So let's take a look at that. I like to draw out the points, and I'll show you why. Our midpoint is 18 and 6, and our endpoint is 14 and 1. Now to find the endpoint, the other one on this side, because this midpoint is between those two, look at what I do to go from that endpoint to the midpoint. So looking at the x-coordinate, to go from 14 to 18, I add 4. So to go from 18 to the other endpoint, I also have to add 4. So 18 plus 4 is 22. So that's the x-coordinate of my other endpoint. Now I do the same for the y's. To go from 1 to 6, I add 5. And to go from 6 to my new endpoint, my other one, I have to add 5. So 6 plus 5 is 11. So my answer is going to be 22, 11 for my other endpoint. So let's type that in, 22, 11. And that's number 5. Number 6, you're asked to find the distance between the 2 points, which are 2, 9, and 2, 6. So let's do that. So I'm going to go through showing you how to use the distance formula. All you do is subtract the 2 x coordinates, square it, subtract the 2 y coordinates, square it, add those 2 up, and take the square root. So first, I identify my x's and y's. 2 and 2 are my x's, 9 and 6 are my y's. Substituting them in, I'll have 2 minus 2 squared plus 6 minus 9 squared. 2 minus 2 is 0, 6 minus 9 is -3, and then squared. 0 is gone, so you don't have to write it. -3 squared is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So my distance is going to be 3, and that's going to be my answer. So let's type that in, number 3. Alright, number 7. It says use the map shown below to find the distance between cities A and B to the nearest 10th. So let's do that. The first thing you need to do is identify the coordinates of the points. Coordinate A has a point of 0, 0, and B's coordinates are 7, 30. Now we substitute those into the distance formula. So my x's are 7 and 0, so I do 7 minus 0. And my y's are 3 and 0, so I have 3 minus 0. Subtracting, I get 7 squared plus 3 squared in the square root. 7 squared is 49, 3 squared is 9. Add those two up, I get 58, and the square root of 58 is approximately 7.6, rounded to the nearest 10th. So let's type that in. So we're going to put in 7.6. And that's number 7. Number 8 says graph the points A, B, C, and D and draw the rectangle and the diagonals AC and BD. So looking at each of these, we have negative 1, 2. So if I start with A, that would not be negative 1, positive 2. That's negative 1, negative 2. These are going on a scale of 2, by the way. 2, 4, 6, 8, left and right and up and down. But this should be positive 2, so it will not be A. Looking at B, we have negative 1, positive 2. B, we have 2, negative 1. C, we have 2, 4, 6, 2 up to 3. So it looks like it may end up being B. And it is. Now we find the midpoints. There we just use the coordinates. So let's do that. So we need to find AC first, so we got to use the coordinates for A and C. So to find the midpoint, we add up the x's, negative 1 plus 6, we get 5. Divided by 2, we get 5 over 2. Adding up the y's and dividing by 2 give us the same thing. So the midpoint of AC is going to be 5 over 2 and 5 over 2. And since it doesn't say a decimal, we'll type in those fractions. So let's do that. 5 over 2 and 5 over 2. Use commas and parentheses. Now we got to find the midpoint of BD. So to find the midpoint of BD, use the coordinates B and D. Add up the x's and divide by 2. So 2 plus 3 is 5. Divided by 2 is 5 over 2. Do the same for the y's, and we also get 5 over 2. So let's type that in. So typing in 5 over 2 and 5 over 2. Good. Now it says, what appears to be true about the diagonals of the rectangle? Well, let's take a look at our rectangle. Since the midpoint of the diagonals are the same, it means that they are intersecting at their midpoints. That means the diagonals are being bisected or cut in half. So we could say the diagonals bisect each other. And that's B for number 8.